Michelle Bishop, Voter Access and Engagement Manager at NDRN, and Erica Hudson, NDRN Public Policy Specialist, on a Zoom meeting from their homes. Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of PAVA IRL, your favorite blog about PAVA and what it looks like IRL or in real life. Welcome to the next in our edition of Fireside Chats, because even though it's 2021, we still have COVID problems and we're still working from home. I am your host, Michelle Bishop, the Voter Access and Engagement Manager at NDRN, and I have a special guest today with us, Erica Hudson from our Public Policy Department at NDRN. Erica, say hi to the people.
Hello, everyone. Happy New Year.
That was good. That was a good hello. All right, so we're coming to you live today. I don't know why I say that. This is not live. This is totally pre-recorded. We're coming to you pre-recorded today from home to talk about voting rights legislation. I know that's an issue that's on a lot of your minds this year, especially at the state level. So many things happened in 2020, and there were so many changes and some last minute changes to the way we vote to accommodate people during the pandemic. And now we're seeing a lot of changes introduced at the state level. Some to maybe expand on those changes, some to try to get rid of some of those changes. And we're going to be talking about that in a webinar we have coming up soon. You'll definitely want to hop on the discussion forums and check out the voting forum for more info on that. But we wanted to talk to you today, Erica, because more and more I'm hearing from our network, our viewers, who are asking about HR 1, the For the People Act, and what that means and what it could mean for their work. Can you tell us a little bit about it? This is not the first time this bill has been introduced.
Right. No, you're exactly right. And I'm sure a lot of folks have been hearing about it. Even, I think it's fair to say, you and I, Michelle, outside of work, we've been hearing about HR 1 For the People Act, which is really exciting. For the People Act is specifically democracy reform legislation. There's folks that have come together and kind of listed out the reasons why we need to change certain things in the American electoral system, right? And that's really what HR 1 For the People Act is trying to do. It was first introduced last Congress, so back in 2019 during the 116th Congress. We're now, after the 2020 election, in the 117th Congress, right? It was introduced then, and it actually did pass the House of Representatives. So it had movement. It did not move in the Senate. No bill was introduced but last Congress over there. So that's why it hasn't become law. But that's why it's also been reintroduced this year in the 117th Congress. In the House of Representatives, it's known as HR 1 For the People Act. And it was actually recently announced that it's going to be introduced in the Senate as well. And it's going to be S1, indicating that democracy reform legislation is the top priority to a lot of folks in both the Senate and the House of Representatives, so Congress as a whole. So that's why I think we're seeing a lot of conversation about what this all entails. And it's no small feat. It's a really, really big piece of legislation. I know you've had the pleasure of reading it. I have had the pleasure of reading it, but it encompasses so many things. But the best way to summarize it in short is that it's divided into three main divisions. One, voting access, two, campaign finance, and three, ethics. And I think it's fair for us to say today, Michelle, you and I will be focusing on that first division for voting access, because I think a lot of folks that maybe will be watching are interested in that piece of it.
That is what we do.
Yes, the campaign finance. I don't. Yeah.
It is a behemoth of a bill, though. It's like 700 pages.
Yeah.
It's definitely 700 pages in my mind.
Yeah.
Flip through it.
Yeah.
It's a
it's a lot. It's a lot of work has gone into it, and there's a lot of conversations. And I think having this talk today will be really helpful, as it's so much, and half the time, like it's a lot.
It is, but it's still not necessarily a done deal. We don't know if this bill will become law.
Right. As of today, right? I don't even know what day it is, to be honest.
I don't either. They all run together.
As of early February, it has not been passed in the House of Representatives. It has not been introduced in the Senate. So there's still a lot that we need to see change, and who knows, it might be changed completely. We really don't know at this point. But what would have to happen, right, is that the House of Representatives would need to pass it, and then the Senate would have to pass it. And right now, we are not close to that point. So that's why I think having these conversations are super helpful to like learn and understand what is going on.
So just tell us a little bit about what's in this bill. I think really for our viewers for this blog, it's about if this bill were to pass, it's got a lot of stuff in it. It could
Right.
change a lot about how voters with disabilities interact with the system. It could change a lot about how we do our PAVA work.
Right.
Let's say it passed, it became law. What can we expect? And there's a lot in there. So I guess let's talk about first, are there things in this bill that we think are maybe beneficial to
Right.
access for voters with disabilities? What kind of changes might they see?
Right. No, that's a really good question. I think, again, just to emphasize, we'll be really focusing on that first part of the bill today and discuss the voter access piece of it. And that specific piece of the bill is really divided into three sections: it's election access, election integrity, and election security. That's what we're really focusing on in the first portion of this bill when we're talking about voter access. And then all of those different titles of those bills are divided into subtitles. I half the time don't know what's going on. But again, it's a very big piece of legislation. But that first piece of it is exploring everything and anything that is really exciting that I think a lot of us have heard things about, is looking at voter registration modernization, right? That is an important topic that we all are talking about, especially I think after the 2020 election and well before that. It's looking at early voting to ensure that folks have enough time to cast their ballot early before election day. It's talking about poll worker training, which is really exciting. And I think for the disability community, it's very exciting to hear that they're going to be looking at training poll workers specifically on how to work and support voters with disabilities, right? It even has a specific section where it's talking about voters with disabilities in general to ensure that they have equal opportunity to vote and cast their ballot every election, right? So it's definitely a lot of thought's been gone into it. There's a lot of conversations about it, and it does a lot of good. And it's something that I think a lot of folks are interested in. I do think we need to get to that common place as well and really have a broad conversation, but there's definitely a lot of exciting things that would benefit the PNA network as a whole, and specifically their PAVA work in particular as well.
So states that don't currently have things like online voter registration,
Right.
automatic voter registration, early
Right.
voting, they
Exactly.
they would become required to add all those.
Exactly. If S1
If
or
it
H1 passed in Congress. Exactly. Right.
would pass through both houses, those are some of the changes we might see. I know there's some concerns with the bill as well. Can you talk
Right.
about some of the changes we could see if the bill passed that could have m- maybe more of a detrimental impact on access for voters with disabilities?
Right. And like that's a great question too. And I should preference too by saying that like we're definitely looking at that federal landscape. But like you mentioned, Michelle, election laws and how procedures work are at the state level. So this is a really interesting conversation for us all to have, as I imagine all of us are have elections go differently for all of us depending where we live in the United States. So that's an important piece to remember as we're looking at any type of federal legislation that's talking about voter access. But in particular, what I know you and I, Michelle, have been really cautious about and looking at closely is that piece of the bill that talks about election integrity and election security. It is saying that there needs to be a paper ballot mandate. And if HR 1 for the People Act was passed in both the Senate and House of Representatives, it would create a paper ballot mandate across the entire country. And I think it's fair to say that that would be a really big concern to us in the disability community for various reasons. But that is included in the bill. And that's something we're talking with folks because a lot of the times I don't think people know that a paper ballot mandate is incredibly harmful to the disability community.
I agree. I think people think it's an election security thing.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
They think
Yeah.
it's gonna secure our votes if they're done on paper, and I don't think that folks always think about what that means for
Right.
with disabilities, who then have to be able to physically handle that paper, read that
Right.
paper.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really interesting to me that there is this push for this
Right.
national mandate for paper ballots, first and foremost, because that's really how people are already voting.
Right.
So it might
Yeah.
not even be needed. That ship is kind of already sailed, and people are already either they're hand marking or they're using a ballot marking device. That's what folks are doing.
Yeah.
But the thing that really concerns me about something like that from a national perspective is that I can't imagine we're going to keep innovating
Right.
our voting systems once we have that mandate. Let's say more secure paperless voting is entirely possible. Maybe we'll have something a year from now, 5 years from now, that makes that accessible and secure at the
Right.
same time. And it would be illegal
Right.
in the
Yeah.
United States to use it. So
Right.
who's going to put the time and the money into
Right.
developing that when voting systems are already not a big money business, right? As far as tech goes,
Yeah.
voting machines are not where the money is at. Um,
Right.
worry that we have I mean, and voters need ballot marking devices. This is not a knock on ballot marking devices, but the most of the machines we have now, they're okay.
Yeah.
They improve accessibility, but they don't make it fully accessible,
Which is required,
which is
right?
required by federal law, right?
Exactly.
Everyone under federal law is guaranteed a private and independent vote. And I don't think ballot marking devices are even getting us there.
No.
They kind of move the ball forward, but they're not getting us into the end zone. I don't know why I'm using football metaphors. I don't even watch football. But
Isn't the big thing coming, like the big thing, the Super Bowl? I feel like that's a thing that's coming. We should know that, right? That's a thing.
oh, it is, isn't it?
Yeah. So that's why you're talking about football metaphors.
That's yes, I totally
Yeah.
know what date that is and who's playing in
I
it.
know
Yes,
you're I same, but we don't need to talk about that. We
no,
can
no, we don't need to talk about that because
yeah.
we definitely know, right? We're
Yeah.
from America. We
Yeah.
follow these things.
Right.
Um, but it's already, it's already technology that gets criticized for its accessibility. It gets criticized for its security. Uh, it seems to me short-sighted to lock that in as our preferred method of voting forever and ever. So I suspect the majority of folks who would be watching this would say, my state already votes on paper, right? So it's
Yeah.
probably not going to change anything
Right.
for them right now, but it could down the road if there's better options. So looking at a state like Georgia right now, they do vote on paper, but every voter uses the ballot marking device. Whether or not they have a disability, they're all voting the same method. Something that personally I really like because I like that integration. I like when we're not segregating out voters with disabilities, but I think it also means we're training our poll workers. They know how to use the equipment because they have to.
Right.
This bill, I know it requires a paper ballot, but I also know in previous versions of this bill, it also required an option to hand mark your ballot. So states like Georgia, if this bill passed, would they be forced to segregate out voting so that when you go to the polling place, you're allowed to hand mark your ballot if you don't have a disability, and there's a separate machine for people with disabilities?
Right. As of right now, yes. Right. That is so essentially what we see in Georgia right now with flip flop, that basically everyone would be asked and offered the paper ballot for them to hand mark it, and then voters with disabilities would be segregated and would be able to use the paper ballot marking device instead, right? So it essentially flip flop if this type of legislation passed.
Okay. So even for those states that are currently voting on paper, which is really almost everyone is using a paper ballot right now, they could still see some changes there.
Exactly. And I think that's what's a really big concern, right? That, I mean, a lot of folks are already voting on paper. And that's what's really common. And arguably, too, I think most people are only familiar with hand marked paper ballots. I think it does depend on the state that you live in. But I know folks in my family or friends that aren't necessarily in the disability community, they don't know what a ballot marking device is. They don't, because when they check in and go to their polling place, they are given a paper ballot, and that's it. And I know when I voted for the first time right after I turned 18, I did not know that I had another option. And I think that's fair to say across the country. So I remember it was in 2016, and I received this very small font paper ballot, and I asked, like, hey, is there anything, like, do you have a magnifier? Can I see anything else that's larger font? The answer was no. So I think for me, that at the time, I didn't realize that that was very problematic. I should have been offered the ballot marking device. There should have been
Erica,
another option.
they violated your rights.
They did, and I didn't know that at the time. Right. And I think that's
true.
Yeah. And now
yes.
I'm the voter who goes to a poll worker, and I'm like, where is it? Like, let me do it. So I think
it alarms me that we did this at the same time.
Right.
Okay, pause. If you didn't catch that just now, that was both Erica and I simultaneously doing a really sassy looking snapping motion to demonstrate how we apparently talk to poll workers.
But I think that's fair to say for a lot of folks, but then also all people who maybe don't need or want the ballot marking device, they don't know that exists. So I think that's something why this is really important to talk about. And then also, I think a lot of people, when they hear a paper ballot mandate, they're like, that's fine, that works, right? Because how would they know?
Right.
You know? Yeah.
So if it works for you, you don't realize how many people it doesn't work for.
Yeah. No,
you're right. These segregated voting systems, it happens exactly how you say. We hear that all over the country, that when we segregate out how people vote,
right,
when the ballot marking device becomes like this secondary method of voting, that people don't even know it exists,
right?
That it's an option. There's probably so many people who would benefit from it, whether or not they think of themselves as a person with a disability, right? Who that bigger font size, that high contrast, that ability to just touch a touch field instead of having to like meticulously fill in a bubble could really benefit. Yeah, I agree. This also extends all the way out to absentee voting, right? Pause. Let's clarify before we get too deep into this. As it stands right now, the bill allows an electronic delivery of a blank ballot, but requires return of a paper ballot without electronic return. How much of that may change before the bill potentially becomes law really remains to be seen. There is the possibility that electronic delivery could be struck as well, and we'll keep you updated. So we saw so much progress in 2020 around vote by mail. States that were adopting electronic ballot delivery systems, they wouldn't be allowed to use those anymore, right? If this did pass.
Right. And I think what's important to emphasize too is that it's clear that voters with disabilities are discussed and they are thought of specifically with this piece of legislation. But again, I think it's fair that we need to have these conversations with folks and hear what people are thinking, because even though we want to make things accessible, the reality is we are not there yet. And even if we say things need to be accessible, they aren't. And I think that's something that why you and I are talking right now is really helpful, because that's a big concern, right? Because right now, absentee ballots or vote by mail ballots, they're not accessible, right? They're not, unless very few states have fully accessible systems. And when we say accessible, I think for you and I, we talk about those four things. We talk about receiving the ballot accessibly. We talk about marking the ballot accessible. We talk about verifying the ballot accessible, and casting. It's all those four things. And part of the time, one or two things are accessible, but the other two aren't. But we need to be in a situation where all of these steps are equally accessible to all voters in the United States.
Yeah, for sure. Or it's just not truly private and independent.
Right. We're going to federal law. That's where we're at. That's what we've said, and that's what we believe in.
It is already the law.
Right. It's there. Yeah.
So this is so helpful. I think for folks who aren't as familiar with HR1, this is a really great jumping off point. In the comments below this video, I'm going to put some resources for folks who want to learn more. Erica, can they also reach out to you? Can we maybe get you to share like your email in case some of our really policy wonky folks want to talk about it more?
Always. And we are very curious to hear what folks are doing in their state, what works for them. As we said in the beginning, all states do things differently. And I think this is a great opportunity to learn from each other. So always feel free to reach out. I have the opportunity at NDRN to work with Michelle and our public policy team and work on Capitol Hill on some of these federal legislations, but we want to hear from you. We want to hear your thoughts and what works well. So always feel free to reach out with anything and everything on any of this.
Awesome. Thank
Yeah,
you
of
so
course.
much, Erica. This is the first time we've had you on the blog.
I know. I was super excited as I am a very high subscriber of Apava IRL by all means. So this is very cool. So yay.
That makes me happy. We're definitely gonna have you back for sure.
Honored.
Hopefully we'll actually be like in the office.
Oh, the days. The days where I could come annoy you all the time.
When we yes, or just like leave the house,
Yeah,
just
what's that like? It's all good. Making the best out of it.
the
So
simple things. I keep calling these fireside chats. I'm not anywhere near my fireplace right now. It's the metaphor is starting to fall flat, y'all. We have to get back out.
I should have put like the like TV fireplace on. That would have been witty. I should have done
That
that.
would have been witty, but we're
So
definitely not
prepared.
re-recording this. This
I'm
is
so sorry.
we're going with what we got.
Next time.
Next time. Yes. Well, until next time, thanks everyone. Please don't hesitate to reach out to me or to Erica if you want to talk about this more. That's what we're here for, to certainly help you understand if this is something that's coming and how it could change your work if it does. So keep an eye out for updates on that. And thanks everyone. Please stay safe.